The great chamber was silent. Thousands of alien representatives sat in their seats watching the platform below. The room was so large that Una could barely see the walls. Lights floated in the air like stars. Holographic screens showed her face to every corner of the massive space. Una stood alone on the accused platform. She was a small woman with black hair tied behind her head. Her uniform was simple and clean. She kept her back straight and her eyes forward. She would not show them fear. The Archon floated above everyone else. It was a being made of living crystal, blue and cold. It was the leader of the Galactic Council, and it had ruled for 10,000 years. When it spoke, its voice filled every mind in the chamber. "The vote is complete," the Archon announced. 847 votes for banishment. 3 votes to abstain. 0 votes against. Una did not react. She had expected this. From the moment the trial began, she knew how it would end. The council had already decided. The trial was just a show. Behind her, 3 other humans stood in silence. Admiral Tai-Ho was an old soldier with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in wars before Una was born. Dr. Mira was young and brilliant, a scientist who had saved millions with her medical research. Engineer Jisoo was quiet and strong, the woman who had built the ship that brought them here. They were all that remained of humanity's voice in the galaxy. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Accord. The Archon continued. Your species is judged to be too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. You do not belong among civilized beings. A sound rose from the chamber. It took Una a moment to realize what it was. Laughter. The alien representatives were laughing at them. You will be relocated to Sector 07, the Archon said. Beyond the boundary rim, no member species will trade with you. No one will speak to you. No one will help you. Your existence will be erased from our records. This punishment is forever. Una finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. May I address the council? The Archon's crystal body flickered. You may speak. It will change nothing. Una looked around the chamber. She saw the Vorix delegation, their 4 eyes bright with satisfaction. She saw the Kailani, tall and thin, their faces showing nothing. She saw the Broom, massive creatures of stone and metal, who had once called humans their friends. None of them would meet her eyes. We saved them, Una said simply. That is our crime. We saved people who were dying. The chamber grew quiet. Colony 17 was burning. Raiders were killing everyone. Men, women, children. The colony sent a distress signal to the council. Do you remember what you said? Una paused. You said they were not part of the accord. You said it was not your problem. You said they should have known the risks of living outside your protection. She took a step forward. We heard that signal too. We saw those people dying, and we could not do nothing. Her voice grew stronger. We sent our ships. We fought the raiders. We lost good men and women. But we saved that colony. 20,000 people are alive today because humanity chose to act. You violated accord law, the Archon said coldly. You engaged in military action without council approval. You disrupted the balance of power. We saved lives. That is not relevant. Una stared at the crystal being for a long moment. Then she smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Yes, I understand now. Lives are not relevant to you. Only power. Only control. Only making sure no one challenges your rule. The laughter had stopped. The chamber was completely silent. You think you are sending us to die? Una said. Sector 07, the dead zone. No resources. No trade, no hope. You think we will fade away and be forgotten? She shook her head slowly. You do not know humans very well. Is that a threat? The Archon asked. No, it is a fact. Una turned to look at her people. Tai-Ho nodded once. Mira wiped tears from her eyes but stood tall. Jisoo's fists were clenched at her sides. We have survived ice ages. We have survived plagues. We have survived wars that burned our entire world. We crawled out of the ashes every single time. We reached the stars with nothing but our will to survive. She turned back to the council. You gave us technology when we joined the Accord. You taught us to rely on your trade routes, your resources, your systems. You thought you made us dependent. You thought you made us weak. Yuna's eyes were hard as stone. You forgot what we were before we met you. You forgot that humans do not break. The Archon's form pulsed with cold light. Your words are meaningless. The sentence is passed. You have 6 standard months to remove all human presence from Accord space. After that, any human found within our borders will be executed. This council is finished with you. The platform began to lower, taking the 4 humans down toward the exit. The alien representatives returned to their conversations, already forgetting the small creatures they had just condemned. But Taiho leaned close to Yuna and whispered, "That was well said." "Does not matter what I said," Yuna replied quietly. "What matters is what we do next." "And what do we do?" Yuna watched the chamber disappear above them as they descended. Thousands of beings who had decided humanity was not worth saving. Thousands of beings who would sleep peacefully tonight, believing they had solved a problem. "We survive," Yuna said. "We build. And one day, when they need us most, we will show them exactly what they threw away." 6 months later, the last human ship crossed the boundary rim. The Council's sensors tracked it until it vanished into the darkness of Sector 0-7, then they deleted humanity from their records and moved on with their lives. They did not know they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. 12 years had passed since the banishment. Commander Dowan stood on the observation deck of Citadel Prime, watching the sky. The twin suns of New Dawn were setting, painting the clouds in shades of orange and red. Below him, the city stretched for miles in every direction. Towers of steel and glass rose from ground that had once been nothing but dust and rock. When the humans first arrived, this world was dead. No water, no life, nothing but stone and silence. The Council had chosen it specifically. They wanted humanity to suffer before they died. They had not understood humans at all. "Sir, the production reports are ready." Doan turned to see his aide Yunji, walking toward him. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a tablet always in her hands. She never smiled, but Doan trusted her completely. "Show me," he said. An handed him the tablet. The numbers glowed on the screen. Shipyard 7 had completed 50 new vessels this month. The mining operations on Colony 4 had exceeded their targets by 200%. The population had grown to 3 billion across 18 worlds. 18 worlds. When they arrived, they had 12 ships and 2 million people. Now they had an empire. "Dr. Soman wants to meet with you," Youngie said. "She says the new engine tests were successful." Dewan nodded slowly. Soman was the greatest scientist humanity had ever produced. In the first 3 years, she had invented a way to communicate instantly across any distance. In year 6, she created engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. Now she was working on something even bigger. "I tell her I will come to her lab this evening." "Yes, sir." Shh. Yunji paused. "There is one more thing. We intercepted a council transmission yesterday, and they are discussing humanity. Or rather, the lack of humanity." A small smile touched Yunji's lips. "They believe we are extinct. They think we died within the first 2 years. Some of them are celebrating." Dewan laughed softly. It was not a happy sound. "Let them celebrate. Let them forget we exist. When the time comes, their surprise will be complete." He walked to the window and looked down at the city again. Thousands of vehicles moved through the streets. Millions of people lived and worked below. Children played in parks. Families ate dinner together. Life continued, stronger than ever. The Council had wanted them to die. Instead, they had built paradise. It had not been easy. Those first years were terrible. Many people did die. They died from hunger, from cold, from accidents in the mines. They died building the machines that would save everyone else. Their names were carved into the memorial wall in the center of New Dawn City. Dewan visited it every week, but the survivors kept working. They found water deep underground. They built greenhouses to grow food. They discovered that the dead zone was not really dead at all. It was full of minerals and metals that the council species considered too difficult to reach. Human engineers built machines that could reach them. Without trade routes, there was no competition. Without council rules, there was no limit to what they could try. Without interference, they were free to innovate. Failure after failure taught them what worked. Mistake after mistake made them smarter. Year by year, they grew stronger. Do you ever think about them? Yunji asked quietly. The council. Dewan did not answer immediately. He thought about Yuna, who had died 5 years ago, old and tired but proud. She had lived long enough to see the first billion humans born in the new worlds. She had smiled and said it was enough. He thought about Admiral Tai-Ho, still alive at 90 years old, training the next generation of officers. He thought about Jisoo, whose engineering designs powered every ship in the fleet. He thought about Mira, whose medical advances had ended disease in human space. They had all been condemned to death. They had all chosen to live instead. I think about them every day, Dewan finally said. But not with anger. Not anymore? Then what do you feel? Dewan turned to face her. Patience. The galaxy is vast, and time moves slowly. One day, something will happen. Something that threatens everything. And when that day comes, the council will remember that they threw us away. And what will we do? That depends on them. Dewan looked back at the sunset. We did not become strong because we wanted revenge. We became strong because that is what humans do. We survive. We build. We protect our own. If the council needs our help, we will decide then whether they deserve it. Yunji nodded. Some people say we should never help them. After what they did, some people are angry. They have the right to be angry. Dewan sighed. But anger is a fire that burns the person holding it. I would rather build than burn. That night, Dewan visited Dr. Summon's laboratory. It was a massive building filled with machines he did not understand. Salman herself was a tiny woman with white hair and bright eyes. She was over 70 years old, but her mind was sharper than ever. Commander, she said with a smile, come, let me show you what we have created. She led him to a window that looked out into space. Beyond it, floating in the darkness, was a ship unlike anything Dewan had ever seen. It was sleek and silver, shaped like an arrow. This is the Horizon, Salman said proudly. It is the fastest ship ever built by any species. It can cross the entire galaxy in 12 hours. The Council's best ships would take 6 months to travel the same distance. Juan stared at it in wonder. How is that possible? We stopped following their rules. Summon's smile grew wider. They told us certain things were impossible. We asked why. When they could not answer, we tried anyway. Most of the time, we failed. But sometimes we succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. She put a hand on the window. This is what humanity does, Commander. We look at the impossible, and we ask one simple question. What if we tried anyway? Dewan understood then why the Council had been afraid of them. It was not their violence. It was not their unpredictability. It was their refusal to accept limits that others considered absolute. 12 years ago, humanity had been exiled to die. Now, they were ready for whatever came next. Ambassador Hanil was eating her lunch when the alarm rang. She put down her food and walked quickly to the communication center. The room was filled with screens and officers monitoring signals from across human space. Everything seemed normal. No attacks. No emergencies. But the alarm kept ringing. What is happening? She asked. A young officer named Kyung pointed to his screen. His face was pale. Ma'am, we are receiving a transmission. But the source is impossible. Show me. Kyung pressed a button. The main screen flickered, and a face appeared. Hanul recognized it immediately. She had studied every council species during her training. This was a Vorix. It was one of the 12 species that had voted loudest for humanity's banishment. The Vorix looked terrible. Its normally bright skin was gray and dull. Its 4 eyes were wide with fear. Behind it, Hanyul could see fire and smoke. Humans, the Vorex said. Its voice was shaking. Please. We need your help. Hanyul said nothing. She simply waited. I know what we did to you, the Vorex continued. I know we have no right to ask, but we have nowhere else to turn. The Council cannot save us. No one can save us. What is happening? Hanyul asked calmly. The swarm. The devouring swarm. The Vorex made a sound that might have been a sob. They were supposed to be extinct. We destroyed them 3,000 years ago. Every last one. But they came back. They came from dark space, and they are eating everything. Hanyul felt cold. She had read about the swarm in old council records. They were a nightmare species. Living ships made of teeth and hunger. They did not want resources or territory. They wanted only to consume. The war to stop them had lasted 500 years and killed trillions. How many worlds have fallen? She asked. Oh. In 2 weeks? Vorex was crying now, strange tears that glowed faintly. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons do nothing. They just keep coming. More and more every day. Hanyul kept her face still, but her heart was racing. Why come to us? You banished us. You erased us from your records. You left us to die because we were wrong. The words seemed to hurt the Vorex to say. You were right about everything. Your aggression, your violence, your refusal to follow rules. These are what the galaxy needs now. We need warriors. We need fighters. We need humans. We need the species you called too dangerous to exist. Yes, the Vorex lowered its head. Please. I am begging you. Millions are dying every day. If you do not help us, we will all be gone within a year. Hanyul looked at the screen for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice without emotion. I will bring your request to the High Council of Humanity. You will have our answer within 1 day. Thank you, the Vorex whispered. Thank you. Transmission ended. Hanyul stood in silence as her officers stared at her. They were all thinking the same thing. The species that had thrown them away was now begging for salvation, ma'am. Kyung asked quietly. What do we do? We follow our laws, Hanyul replied. The Senate will decide. That night, the Senate chamber was filled with angry voices. Let them burn. Senator Junho shouted. He was a large man with a scar across his face, a wound from the early years when survival was not certain. They wanted us dead. Now they want us to save them? No, never. Let them suffer as we suffered, become what they accused us of being. Senator Yaren stood on the opposite side. She was small and calm, but her voice carried across the chamber. They called us monsters. Do we prove them right by watching billions die? We owe them nothing. This is not about debt. This is about who we are. The argument continued for hours. Some senators wanted revenge. Others wanted isolation. Let the Council and the Swarm destroy each other. Humanity was safe behind the boundary rim. The Swarm had never entered the dead zone. They could simply wait until the storm passed. Then an old man stood up. The chamber fell silent. Admiral Taiho was 90 years old. He walked with a cane, and his hands shook slightly. But his eyes were clear, and his voice was strong. I remember the day we were banished, he said slowly. I stood next to Yuna as the council laughed at us. I felt shame and rage. I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to make them pay for what they did. He paused and looked around the chamber. Yuna said something to me that day. She said, what matters is not what they did. What matters is what we do next. I did not understand then. I was too angry. He smiled faintly. I understand now. Taiho took a shaky step forward. We saved Colony 17 because it was right. Not because they were part of our alliance. Not because they could pay us. Because innocent people were dying, and we could help. That is why we were banished. That is what the council could not accept. He raised his head. Has exile changed who we are? Have 12 years in the darkness turned us into something else? No one spoke. The swarm will not stop with the council, Taiho continued. If they consume the galaxy, they will eventually find us too. But even if they did not, even if we were perfectly safe, I would still say we must help. Because that is what humans do. We do not stand by while others suffer. We cannot. He turned to face the senators directly. Vote your conscience. But remember this. One day, when our children ask what humanity did when the galaxy was burning, what will your answer be? Tai-Ho sat down heavily. The chamber was absolutely silent. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Humanity would fight. The swarm had never seen anything like this. Fleet Admiral Siwan stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching the enemy through the main screen. The Vorix home system was ahead. Between humanity and that system was a wall of monsters. The swarm ships were not made of metal. They were alive. Each one was a creature of dark flesh and white teeth, with tentacles that reached across space like hungry fingers. There were thousands of them. Millions. They blocked out the stars. Admiral, his tactical officer, Nari, reported, "Enemy forces outnumber us approximately 50-1. Siwan nodded slowly. 3,000 human warships faced 150,000 swarm creatures. By any normal calculation, this was impossible. But humans had never been good at normal calculations. All ships, Siwan said calmly. Execute pattern Omega. Show them what we learned in exile. The human fleet moved. Council ships flew in straight lines. They formed neat patterns and fired from safe distances. It was efficient. It was logical. It was exactly what the swarm expected. Human ships did not fly like that. The Indomitable dove straight into the heart of the swarm formation. It twisted and spun, dodging tentacles and teeth. Behind it, dozens of ships followed in perfect coordination. They were not retreating from danger. They were hunting. Siwan watched as the first weapons fired. Singularity torpedoes tore holes in space itself, pulling swarm creatures into tiny black points. Plasma lances cut through living flesh like knives through paper. Graviton disruptors crushed monsters into balls of broken meat. The swarm screamed. It was a sound that traveled through space itself, a psychic cry of pain and confusion. They had consumed 12 council worlds without losing a single creature. These small metal ships were supposed to be easy prey. Instead, they were dying by the thousands. Enemy formation is breaking, Nari announced. They are trying to regroup. Do not let them. Siwan gripped the arm of his chair. All assault teams, you are clear to deploy. Protect the civilians. On the surface of Vorix Prime, the ground battle was even more terrifying. Sergeant Hayok led her squad through the streets of the capital city. Her power armor was heavy and strong, designed to survive things that would kill any normal human. She needed every bit of that protection. The swarm creatures on the ground were different from the ones in space. They were smaller, about the size of large dogs, but there were millions of them. They ran on 6 legs, and their mouths could bite through steel. Contact left. One of her soldiers shouted. Hayok turned and fired. Her rifle sent a beam of concentrated energy into the swarm creature. It exploded in a spray of dark blood. 2 more appeared behind it. She killed those 2. Behind her squad, thousands of Vorix civilians were running toward the evacuation shuttles. They were strange creatures, tall and thin, with skin that glowed faintly. Many of them were carrying children. Some were too injured to walk and had to be carried by others. A young Vorix child tripped and fell. Before its parents could react, a swarm creature lunged toward it. Hayok moved without thinking. She threw herself between the child and the monster, catching its teeth on her armored forearm. The creature's jaws closed with terrible force. Warning lights flashed inside her helmet. She did not care. With her free hand, she pulled her sidearm and shot the creature through the head. It went limp. She threw it aside and turned to the child. Go, she said through her helmet speakers. Run to the shuttles. I will protect you. The child stared at her with 4 wide eyes. Why? It asked in a small voice. Why do you help us? My parents said you were the enemy. They said you were gone forever. Hayok knelt down so she was at the child's level. Behind her, she could hear more creatures coming. Her squad was forming a defensive line. They would hold as long as they could. Because you needed help, she said simply. That is enough. The child's parent grabbed it and ran. Hyok stood and rejoined her squad. More swarm creatures poured around the corner. She raised her rifle and fired. The battle lasted 11 days. 11 days of constant fighting in space and on the ground. 11 days of ships exploding and soldiers dying. 11 days of holding the line, while millions of civilians escaped to safety. Admiral Siwan did not sleep for the last 3 days. He stood on the bridge and commanded his fleet, making decisions that sent people to their deaths. Every loss hurt him. Every name was a weight on his soul, but slowly, impossibly, they were winning. The swarm had never faced an enemy like humanity. Council species fought defensively. They protected their ships and avoided risk. Humans attacked. They charged into impossible situations. They sacrificed themselves to save strangers. It was not logical. It was not efficient. But it was terrifying. On the final day, the swarm broke. The remaining creatures fled into dark space, screaming their psychic cries of defeat. The human fleet did not chase them. They were too exhausted, too damaged, too few. Of the 3,000 ships that had entered the system, only 1,200 could still fly. 23,000 humans had died. Their names would be added to the memorial wall on New Dawn, but the Vorix homeworld was safe. 2 billion civilians had survived. Admiral Siwan sat in his chair and looked at the screen. The stars were visible again. The monsters were gone. Behind him, his crew was crying with exhaustion and relief. Sir Nari said quietly, "We are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Show me." Vorix leader appeared on screen. It was the same one who had begged for help. Its skin was still dull, but its eyes showed something new. Wonder, gratitude. "You do not have words," the Vorix said. "In our language, there is no word for what you have done. You saved us. After everything we did to you, you saved us." Siwan thought about how to respond. He thought about the friends he had lost. The ships burning in space. The soldiers who died protecting strangers. "That is what humans do," he finally said. "We hope you remember that." The transmission ended. Siwan leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. They had won. But the cost had been terrible. He hoped it was worth it. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Chancellor Bora walked slowly toward the central platform. Her footsteps echoed in the massive room. Thousands of alien representatives watched her from their seats. The same seats where they had once laughed at humanity. The same room where they had voted to send her people to die. Bora was not a tall woman. She was not physically impressive. But as she walked, every eye followed her. Every being in that chamber understood that something important was about to happen. The Archon floated above the platform, its crystal body dim and gray. It looked smaller than Bora remembered from the old recordings. Weaker. The past weeks had been hard on everyone. "Chancellor Bora," the Archon said. Its voice no longer filled minds with power. It simply spoke, like any other being. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, we wish to express our deepest gratitude and our most sincere apologies. What we did to your people was wrong. We see that now. We were blind, and our blindness almost cost us everything." Bora reached the platform and stood in the exact spot where Yuna had stood decades ago. She looked up at the Archon and smiled faintly. "We did not come here for apologies." The chamber stirred. Representatives whispered to each other. What did the humans want, if not apologies? "Then why have you come?" the Archon asked. Bora turned slowly, looking at all the species gathered before her. The Vorix, whose world her people had saved, the Kilani, who had watched the battle from safe distance, the Broom, who had finally sent their own ships to help in the final days, hundreds of other species, all of them saved by human sacrifice. 12 years ago, you banished us for protecting innocent people. You called our compassion a crime. You called our courage a threat. You said we were too violent, too aggressive, too unpredictable to be part of your civilization.
Ow.
She paused. You sent us to the darkness to die? No one spoke. No one moved. We did not die. Bora's voice was calm but strong. We built. We grew. We became something you never imagined. And when the swarm came, when your worlds were burning and your people were screaming, we came back. She stepped forward. 23,000 humans died, saving your galaxy. Good men and women who had every reason to hate you. They fought anyway. They died anyway. Do you know why? The Archon's form flickered. Why? Because that is who we are. Bora's eyes were bright with emotion she refused to let fall. We do not abandon people in need. We cannot watch others suffer when we have the power to help. You called this a weakness. You called it dangerous. You were wrong. She raised her head higher. Some of my people wanted revenge. When your message came, when you begged us for help, there were voices saying we should let you burn. Let you feel what we felt. Let you know the pain of being abandoned. She shook her head. But we did not listen to those voices. That is not the humanity we chose to be. The chamber was absolutely silent. We do not want your apologies, Bora repeated. Apologies are just words. Words did not save your worlds. Human blood saved your worlds. She looked around the room. We want something more. What do you want? A Vorix representative called out. Name it. Whatever you ask, we will give. Bora turned to face the speaker. I want you to build something new. All of you, together. She raised her hand and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed the human territory's 18 worlds thriving beyond the boundary rim. It showed the council territories. Hundreds of worlds recovering from the swarm, and between them, where the boundary had once been. There was now empty space. The old system failed, Bora said. Your council was built on fear and control. Species were ranked by power. Worlds were abandoned if they could not serve your interests. Rules were more important than lives. She pointed at the display. That system created us. It created the swarm. It created every tragedy that has ever come to this galaxy. She closed her fist, and the display disappeared. We offer you a new way, not as rulers, but as partners. Not as conquerors, but as equals. Every species, every world. One alliance built on a simple idea. We protect each other. All of us, no matter what. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions and objections. Some called for accepting the offer immediately. Others demanded more time to consider. The Archon's form pulsed as it tried to restore order. Bora simply waited. Eventually, the noise died down. An old broom representative stood up. His stone body was cracked and worn, a survivor of many wars. You ask us to abandon everything we have built, he rumbled. Thousands of years of civilization. All our laws and traditions. No, Bora replied. I ask you to build something better. Keep what works. Change what does not. Grow together instead of apart. And if we refuse, Bora smiled sadly. Then we return beyond the rim. We continue building our own civilization. We protect our own people. And when the next great threat comes, because it will come, you will face it without us. She turned back to the Archon. We do not need you. We never did. But we would rather work together than apart. We would rather build bridges than walls. Her voice softened. We would rather be your friends than your memory. The Archon was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it descended from its high position until it was level with Bora. They stood face to face, the ancient crystal being and the human woman. You are remarkable, the Archon said quietly. We exiled you in fear. You returned with kindness. We do not deserve this. Perhaps not, Bora agreed. But that is not the point. The question is not what you deserve. The question is what kind of galaxy we want to build. She extended her hand, a human gesture of friendship. So what is your answer? Will you help us build something worth leaving to our children? The Archon looked at her hand. Then it reached out with one crystalline limb and touched it gently. Yes, it said. We will try. The vote took 3 hours. Representatives debated and argued and finally decided. When it was over, the result was unanimous. The old Galactic Council was dissolved. In its place, a new Unity Council was formed. Humans and aliens would govern together as equals. 50 years later, a statue stood in the center of Unity Plaza, the heart of the new galactic capital. It showed a human woman with black hair and defiant eyes. The name carved beneath was simple: Una. She stood alone so none would have to. Visitors from every species came to see it. They brought their children and told them the story of the humans who were banished to die but built an empire instead. The story of the species that saved its enemies and changed the galaxy forever, and in schools across 1,000 worlds. Young beings of every shape and color learned the most important lesson humanity had to teach. You could exile them. You could dismiss them. You could abandon them to the void, but you could never, ever break them.